From the quietest moments in history to the loudest discoveries, welcome to the All Sorts podcast.
It's going to be a good one.
Today, we're digging deep, not with tools, but with our minds.
That's right.
We're going to uncover something amazing, something that still captures the imagination thousands of years later.
Definitely.
You, our listeners, sent us on this quest. You wanted us to explore an incredible work of art, an army that stands guard, silently protecting an emperor's eternal sleep.
It's an incredible story.
Let's journey together into the earth and uncover the story of the Terracotta Army. The Terracotta Army of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang.
Powerful imagery.
This army is a powerful statement of burial art meant to follow him into the afterlife.
An army for the afterlife.
To guide our deep dive, we have sources from some amazing places.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
The Asian Art Museum,
Thanks.
the Minneapolis Institute of Art,
Cool.
UNESCO,
Wow.
Smart History,
Love that one.
and Wikipedia.
The ultimate source.
Our mission is to understand the true meaning of this Terracotta Army.
It's more than just a bunch of statues, right?
Exactly. We want to see them as a window into the worldview, the ambition, and the legacy of the first emperor.
Ambitious is an understatement.
So are you ready to unearth the secrets beneath the soil?
I am so ready. Let's dig in.
Let's start with how this incredible army was first discovered.
Picture this.
Mm.
March 1974.
Okay.
Mount Lai, just east of the tomb of Qin Shi Huang.
Right.
Local farmers are digging a well. This area is known for its underground springs.
Makes sense.
And bam, they hit something hard. Fragments of terracotta figures.
Wow, imagine that. You're just looking for water and boom, you find an ancient warrior.
It's mind-blowing.
For the record, these farmers were young Zifa and his 5 brothers,
A family affair.
and their neighbor, Wang Puzi.
The more the merrier.
This region had these crazy underground water courses, so digging a well must have been difficult enough even without finding an army.
I can't even imagine.
But, this wasn't the first time someone found terracotta pieces in this area, was it?
That's right. There have been these random finds for centuries. Little hints that something big was buried down there.
Like whispers from the past.
Exactly. But when those farmers made their discovery in '74, that kicked off a real investigation.
I bet it did.
Archaeologists, led by people like Zhao Kanmin, took over.
What did they find?
What they found was unbelievable. The biggest collection of pottery figures ever found.
It's so huge they built a museum over the site, right?
Yeah, a whole museum complex. It's amazing.
It's hard to even grasp the scale of it all. To really appreciate this discovery, let's talk about the man behind it.
The emperor himself.
Qin Shi Huang, who lived from 259 to 210 BCE.
BCE, before Common Era, just to clarify.
Thanks. He became the king of the Qin state when he was only 13 years old.
13, that's crazy young.
I know, right? And through some pretty clever strategies and some battles, he unified the warring states of China.
They brought them all together.
And in 221 BCE, he declared himself the first emperor of the Qin dynasty.
The beginning of a new era.
A new era indeed. And almost as soon as he became emperor, he started planning his final resting place.
He was thinking long term.
His tomb, they say, took 38 years to build.
38 years.
And get this, during the last 13 years, there were 700,000 laborers working on it.
That's an insane amount of people.
It's mind-boggling. It shows you the power this emperor had.
Power, resources, everything.
He didn't just want a tomb, he wanted a statement.
A legacy.
And we don't just have to guess about this. We have historical accounts from Sima Qian.
The records of the grand historian.
Exactly. He wrote that about 100 years after the tomb was finished.
It's like a window into the past.
Of course, maybe some of it's been exaggerated over time, but it gives us a glimpse of what they thought this tomb was.
It's still an invaluable resource.
Sima Qian wasn't the only one writing about it, though, right?
No. We also have Li Du Yuran, the geographer.
What did he have to say?
He talked about why they chose Mount Lai for the tomb. Because it was considered auspicious, the geology, the rocks and minerals. It was thought to be lucky.
Like a sacred place.
Exactly. And it was rich in jade and gold.
Ah, so there was a practical side to it, too.
Always.
It's interesting, though, that Sima Qian's account doesn't actually mention the Terracotta Army.
You'd think an army of thousands would be worth a mention.
Right. But he does talk about what's inside the tomb.
Oh, yeah. What's that like?
He describes palaces, towers, officials, treasures.
Wow, the whole 9 yards.
He even says there are rivers of mercury flowing inside and that the ceiling is a map of the stars.
Mercury rivers.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit far-fetched, don't you think?
You'd think so, but here's the crazy part. they've actually found high levels of mercury in the soil around the tomb.
So maybe he wasn't making it up.
Maybe not. So we have this incredible description of an underground palace.
Fit for an emperor.
But no mention of the thousands of soldiers standing guard outside.
It's a real mystery. Why would he leave that out?
Why indeed? It's a historical puzzle within an even bigger puzzle.
Well, the mystery continues.
Because the Terracotta Army isn't just a random collection of statues.
No way.
It's part of this huge necropolis.
Necropolis meaning?
A giant cemetery, essentially. This one is estimated to cover a mind-blowing 98 square kilometers.
That's like a city of the dead.
It's like an underground city built for one man.
Talk about going all out.
And it was all designed to be a mini version of the emperor's palace and his empire.
As above, so below.
The tomb itself is at the bottom of Mount Lai.
Okay.
It's surrounded by these really thick walls.
The W-rammed earth walls.
Right. They packed the earth down in layers to make them super strong.
Makes sense.
And within these walls, they built offices, halls, stables for horses, even a park.
Like a whole little world down there.
A world meant to serve the emperor in the afterlife. They believe that everything he had in life, he should have in death.
I guess when you're the emperor, you get what you want.
Even in death, apparently. Now, about the placement of those warriors. They were put to the east of the tomb.
Interesting. Any reason for that?
It's symbolic. They're facing east towards the states that Qin Shi Huang conquered.
Ah, so he's still protecting his empire, even from beyond the grave.
Exactly. His silent army, always on guard. And what's crazy is that over time, about 5 meters of soil piled up over the whole site.
It's like it was meant to be hidden.
Until those farmers came along in 1974.
And changed history forever.
Now, the emperor's actual burial chamber, that's still unopened.
Really? Why haven't they opened it?
Well, there are a few reasons. One is preservation.
Oh, right.
When they dug up the Terracotta Army, the paint started to flake off because of the dry air in Xi'an.
So they're worried about damaging the artifacts inside the tomb.
Exactly. It's this delicate balance. We want to learn, but we also need to protect these things for future generations.
It's a tough call.
But even though we haven't seen inside the tomb, Sima Qin gave us some clues, remember?
Oh, yeah, he described it in detail.
He wrote about these crazy booby traps, like crossbows that would fire if anyone tried to break in.
Talk about security.
And he mentioned those rivers of mercury, maybe to symbolize rivers or maybe as a kind of defense.
Sounds pretty dangerous, if you ask me.
It does, doesn't it? What we know for sure is that the people who built this tomb were incredibly skilled engineers.
They were way ahead of their time.
But let's shift our focus now to the parts of this underground world that we have explored. The places where the Terracotta Army stands.
Let's go.
There are 4 main pits, about 7 meters deep.
7 meters. That's pretty deep.
They're about 1.5 kilometers east of the tomb mound.
Got it.
Pit 1 is the biggest and the most excavated. This is where they found the main force of the army, over 3,000 figures.
3,000. That's incredible.
And they're not just randomly placed, they're in battle formation, lined up in 11 corridors.
Like they're ready to march into war.
Exactly. And these corridors were carefully constructed. They had wooden ceilings held up by beams and posts.
So they didn't just dig a hole and throw the statues in.
No, they put a lot of effort into making it stable.
What about the other pits?
Pit 2 is a bit more varied. It has cavalry, infantry units, and war chariots.
Like a full-fledged army.
Pit 3 is thought to be the command post. They found high-ranking officers there and another chariot.
Makes sense. You need someone to lead the army.
And then there's Pit 4.
What about that one?
It's empty.
Empty. Like nothing in there.
Nothing. Archaeologists think they never finished building it.
Maybe they ran out of time?
Maybe. Or maybe something happened, like the emperor's death, that stopped construction.
That's possible.
Now, here's something interesting. In pits 1 and 2, they found evidence of fire damage.
Fire damage. Like the place was burned.
It seems so. And a lot of the weapons are missing.
Looted? Maybe.
Most likely. They think that after the Qin dynasty fell, people came and looted the site.
Sad to think about all that history lost.
And the fire probably caused the roof to collapse, damaging the figures.
So the ones we see today have been put back together.
Many of them, yes. It's a huge restoration project.
Can you imagine putting all those pieces back together?
It's like a giant ancient jigsaw puzzle.
A puzzle that tells an amazing story.
But the army pits aren't the only places they've found things.
Oh, tell me more.
They've been excavating areas around the tomb mound, and they've found even more treasures.
What kind of treasures?
Bronze carriages.
Fancy.
And more terracotta figures, but these are different. They're entertainers, acrobats, strongmen.
It's like they had a whole circus down there.
And they found stone armor meticulously crafted.
The armor made of stone.
It's incredible. And burial sites for horses, and not just regular horses, exotic animals too.
Like a zoo for the afterlife.
They even found bronze cranes and ducks.
Cranes and ducks. What were they doing down there?
They were part of an underground park.
Wow, this necropolis was like a whole other world.
It was a self-contained universe built for the emperor's afterlife.
It's mind-blowing, the amount of work and detail that went into this.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the warriors themselves.
Okay, let's get up close and personal.
These figures are life-sized, between 1.75 and 2 meters tall.
So not tiny statues.
Not at all. And the officers are even taller to show their rank.
Makes sense.
The first thing you notice is that they're all different.
Different how?
Their heights, their uniforms, their hairstyles, everything.
They really paid attention to detail.
They did. They wanted to show the different ranks and roles in the army.
It's like each one is a portrait of a real soldier.
And their faces, it's almost like they're all individuals.
How did they do that?
Well, scholars have figured out that they used about 10 basic face molds.
Like a starting point.
Exactly. But then they would add extra clay and sculpt individual features.
So mass production, but with a personal touch.
It's pretty amazing. You have these different types of soldiers.
Like what?
Heavily armored infantry.
The front line.
Right. And lightly armored infantry.
Quicker movements.
Exactly. And cavalrymen with their special hats.
The pillbox hats.
And chariot drivers with helmets.
To protect them during battle.
And charioteers holding spears.
Ready to strike.
And archers kneeling and standing.
A mix of positions for different strategies.
And generals and other officers, they're all there.
A whole army. Frozen in time.
And even within the same rank, there are variations in their clothes.
Really? Give me an example.
Some have shin pads, some don't. The style of their trousers can be different. And their armor, the designs are all unique.
That's crazy detail.
And we can't forget the horses.
The horses.
They made life-size terracotta horses for the chariots and cavalry.
Of course, the horses are important too.
And these figures weren't just plain clay.
No.
They were painted in bright colors.
Wow, so they weren't just gray.
No, they were full of life. They used all sorts of pigments.
Like what?
Ground up precious stones.
That's fancy.
And burned animal bones for a brilliant white.
So they were resourceful.
They were. And they used minerals like iron oxide for reds.
Okay.
And cinnabar for brighter reds.
So many shades of red.
And malachite for greens.
Green like jade.
Exactly. And azurite for blues.
Blue was a precious color in ancient China.
It was. And charcoal for black.
Black for shadows and details.
And then there's this special pigment called Chinese purple.
Chinese purple? I've never heard of that.
It's a really interesting pigment with a fascinating story. We'll get to that later.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
They also use tree sap to bind the pigments.
Like a natural glue.
Exactly. And they even had colors like pink and lilac.
It must have been an amazing sight.
Imagine seeing this vast army, all these colors, standing in the darkness.
It would be breathtaking.
Unfortunately, a lot of the paint has flaked off over time.
Because of the dry air.
Right. It's a reminder that even though these figures are made of clay, they're still fragile.
Time takes its toll.
Now, remember I mentioned those figures they found in Pit K9901?
The acrobats.
Yes, the acrobats. They're totally different from the soldiers. They're more dynamic, more expressive.
Like they're caught in the middle of a performance.
Exactly. And the way they sculpted these figures, you can really see they understood the human body.
The muscles, the bones, it's all there.
It's incredible. We still don't know for sure what these acrobats were supposed to represent.
What are the theories?
Maybe they were actual acrobats or dancers or strongmen who entertained the emperor.
A little entertainment for the afterlife.
Why not? But there are far fewer of these figures than the soldiers.
So they weren't as important.
Maybe they had a more specialized role.
Makes you wonder what else is down there.
And here's another thing. They're almost completely naked.
Naked.
They're only wearing loincloths.
So you can see every detail of their bodies.
You can. The muscles, the joints, everything is incredibly lifelike.
It's art and anatomy all in one. Some of them are lean and agile.
For those high-flying acrobatics.
Some are more muscular.
The strongmen, maybe.
It's like they captured a moment of movement, of performance.
It gives us a glimpse into the entertainment that the emperor probably enjoyed. Now, the realism and the individual faces of the entire Terracotta Army, it's led to some interesting theories.
Oh. Like what?
Some scholars think there might have been Greek influence in the art.
Greek influence? in China.
It sounds crazy, but there are some similarities in style.
Who came up with this idea?
A German scholar named German Hafner back in 1986.
Okay.
He pointed out some similarities with Greek art.
Interesting.
And then another scholar, Duan Qingbo, noticed resemblances to later Central Asian statues.
Statues that were influenced by the Greek.
Right. And there's another scholar, Li Shuzhen.
What did he say?
He believes that the Terracotta Army was definitely made by Chinese artists.
Okay.
But he says it's possible they were inspired by Greek art.
So maybe some ideas traveled from west to east.
It's possible. It shows you that even in ancient times, the world was more connected than we think.
It's amazing to think about.
But not everyone agrees with this theory.
I bet some people find it hard to believe.
Some scholars say there's no real evidence of a direct link.
Like who?
Zhang Weixing, for one. He says there's no substantial evidence.
So he thinks it's just a coincidence.
And Raoul McLaughlin points out that there are big differences between the Terracotta Army and Greek art.
Differences in style, materials, maybe even the meaning behind the art.
Exactly. And then there's Darrell Wilkinson.
What's his take?
He argues that naturalism in art can develop in different cultures independently.
So it doesn't have to be because of outside influence.
Right. He gives the example of the Moche civilization in Peru. They had a very naturalistic art style, but they had no contact with Greece.
So it's still a debate.
It is. And it's a reminder that art is complex. It's not always easy to trace influences and origins.
Especially when you're talking about ancient art.
But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The Terracotta Army is an incredible feat of engineering.
No doubt about that.
Thousands of life-sized figures.
Made by hand.
Well, not entirely by hand. They had workshops.
Workshops, like factories.
Kind of. They employed government laborers and local craftsmen.
A big team effort.
And they used local materials.
So they didn't have to import anything.
Not for the clay figures.
Makes sense.
Now, here's how they did it. They made the heads, arms, legs, and torsos separately.
In pieces.
Right. And they probably used molds for the basic shapes.
Like a template.
Exactly. And then they assembled the pieces to create the whole figure.
So it's almost like modular construction.
Kind of. It allowed them to produce a lot of figures quickly and efficiently.
Smart.
And then they carefully placed the figures in the pits in specific formations.
According to their rank and their role in the army.
It's all very organized. And here's something really interesting.
I'm listening.
They've done studies comparing the faces of the statues to the people who live in the area today.
Yeah.
And there's a strong resemblance.
So maybe they used real soldiers as models.
It's definitely a possibility.
That's pretty cool.
It is. Now, about those molds I mentioned.
One's for the faces.
They've identified about 10 different ones.
So 10 basic face types.
Right, but then they added details to make each face unique.
So it wasn't just cookie-cutter faces.
No, they wanted each soldier to have its own personality.
It's amazing the level of artistry they achieved.
And they might have even used similar techniques to make the legs as they did for terracotta drainage pipes.
Really?
It seems that way. So they might have had a kind of assembly line.
Make the parts, fire them, assemble them.
And to keep track of everything, the workshops inscribed their names or marks on the pieces they made.
Like a quality control system.
Exactly. It's a remarkable level of organization.
It speaks volumes about the emperor's power and the skills of his people.
It does. Now, we can't forget the weapons.
The weapons.
The soldiers were originally armed
With real weapons.
with real bronze weapons.
Wow.
Sadly, most of them were either stolen or have rotted away.
That's a shame.
But they have found over 40,000 bronze weapons.
40,000? That's a lot of weapons.
Swords, daggers, spears, lances, axes, scimitars, shields, crossbows, arrowheads. You name it, they had it.
They were ready for war.
They were. And the arrowheads, they found bundles of them, 100 in each bundle.
Still sharp, I bet.
And scientists have studied them and think they used a kind of cellular production system to make them.
What's that?
Basically, different workshops specialized in making different parts.
So like division of labor.
Exactly. It's like an early form of mass production.
Pretty advanced for their time.
Now, for a long time, they thought some of the bronze weapons were coated with chromium dioxide to prevent rust.
That's amazing.
It was, but then in 2019, they did more research.
Yeah.
And they found out that the chromium was probably from contamination.
Contamination?
From lacquer.
So it wasn't intentional.
It seems not.
Mm-hmm.
But the soil around the tomb is slightly alkaline.
Alkaline meaning?
It's basic, not acidic.
Oh, yeah.
And that helped to preserve the bronze.
So the soil itself acted as a preservative.
Exactly. But even without the chromium, the craftsmanship of these weapons is still remarkable.
I bet they're beautiful.
They are. They used complex alloys.
Alloys meaning...
Mixtures of different metals.
Okay.
Copper, tin, nickel, magnesium, cobalt. They knew their metallurgy.
They were skilled metal workers.
And some of the swords have inscriptions that date back to before the tomb.
Really?
So they might have been used in real battles before they were buried with the emperor.
Wow. So they're not just replicas.
It seems not. It makes you think about the stories behind those weapons.
Imagine the battles they saw.
It's fascinating. Now, in terms of historical context, the Terracotta Army is pretty unique.
Unique how?
There aren't many examples of large-scale terracotta figures from before that time.
So it's kind of a new thing.
It seems so. There are some smaller figures from the late Zhou dynasty.
Like what?
The Terpo horse rider, for example.
What's that?
It's a small figure of a man on horseback.
Cool.
It's the earliest known depiction of a cavalryman in Chinese art.
That's pretty significant.
It is, but it's nothing like the Terracotta Army.
In terms of scale and detail.
Exactly. The Qin dynasty really pushed the boundaries.
They did things on a grand scale.
They did. But even though the Terracotta Army was unique, it did have an impact on later dynasties.
Oh, how so?
Later dynasties, like the Western Han and the Eastern Han, they also made funerary terracotta figures.
They followed the trend.
In a way, but they were usually smaller and not as focused on war.
So the Qin style didn't really continue.
Not in the same way. The emperor style was sort of a one-time thing.
A unique moment in history.
But it did come back later in Buddhist sculpture.
Buddhist sculpture. That's a different style altogether.
It is, but it shows that the idea of using terracotta figures for religious purposes continued.
It's interesting how these ideas evolve over time.
It is.
Yeah.
And speaking of evolving, the Terracotta Army is still a subject of research today.
Really? What are scientists studying?
All sorts of things. They're using high-tech methods to analyze the materials and techniques.
Like what?
They used something called synchrotron spectroscopy.
Sounds complicated.
It is, but they used it to figure out how they made that Chinese purple pigment. It turns out it was probably a byproduct of Taoist alchemists trying to make jade.
So they were experimenting with alchemy and accidentally created a new pigment.
It seems that way. It's a fascinating connection between art and science.
And spirituality.
Right. And remember those bronze arrowheads?
Well, the ones they found in bundles.
They've analyzed those and found evidence of a very sophisticated manufacturing system.
Like what?
A cellular production system where different workshops made different parts.
Like an early form of specialization.
Exactly. It's very similar to modern manufacturing techniques.
That's incredible.
And they've used scanning electron microscopy to examine other artifacts.
What did they find?
Evidence that they use lathes for polishing.
Lathes?
They're machines that spin objects so you can shape them.
Ah, I see.
It shows they had some pretty advanced technology.
They were ahead of their time.
And in 2022, they did a study on the faces of the warriors.
What did they find out?
They compared them to the faces of people living in China today, especially in the North and West, and they found no significant differences.
So they really did use real people as models.
It's very likely. All of this research is helping us to understand the Terracotta Army better than ever before.
It's like we're getting to know these ancient people.
And it's not just scientists who are fascinated by the Terracotta Army.
No.
It's become a global phenomenon.
Really?
They've had exhibitions all over the world.
Where?
Melbourne,
Okay.
London,
Wow.
Barcelona,
Cool.
Madrid,
No way.
Santiago,
Amazing.
and all over North America, Europe, and Australia.
So people everywhere want to see them.
They do. There was even a big exhibition at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco in 2013.
I bet it was crowded.
It was. People are drawn to these figures, to their story, to their mystery.
It's something that transcends time and culture.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main takeaways for you?
Hit me with them.
The Terracotta Army is more than just a collection of statues. It's a statement about the first emperor.
His ambition, his power, his beliefs.
It shows us a level of craftsmanship and organization that was way ahead of its time.
They were incredibly skilled.
And the research continues to teach us more about ancient China.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of history.
Now, remember how the first emperor was obsessed with immortality?
Yeah, he wanted to live forever.
Do you think he achieved it, in a way?
Through his legacy.
His Terracotta Army is still standing thousands of years later. People are still talking about him, still fascinated by him.
I guess in a way, he did achieve a kind of immortality.
It makes you think, what will people remember about us thousands of years from now?
What will our legacy be?
It's something to think about.
It is.
If this deep dive into the Terracotta Army has sparked your curiosity, we invite you to join us on more journeys of discovery.
More deep dives.
Exactly. And share this deep